Welcome to Kinecta in our safety training classroom. I'm Mike and we'll be walking you through the training today. Our topic for today's training is personal protective equipment, more commonly referred to as PPE. I find that so many people just grab PPE, throw it on, and feel like they're protected and they're protected properly. Oftentimes, we don't use the right PPE. Sometimes we slap on an N95 respirator and think it's going to take out anything. Well, it doesn't. Sometimes you put on safety glasses, there may be the wrong kind or don't give you the adequate protection. We want to flush some of this out today and make sure that when you have PPE, that it's the proper PPE, you know how to wear it, and you know what it's all about. Our agenda for today is going to include an overview of what the OSHA rules say. Subpart I in the OSHA rules cover all different types of PPE. Today, we're going to cover most of them, the general PPE. We will not cover respirators. That's a big topic we'll leave to its own. We also will not be talking about fall protection. There's all different kinds of applications for fall protection, and we're going to cover that with a different training session. And the other one we're not going to talk about today is electrical safety clothing. That's highly specialized, and we'll leave that up to the experts. Then we're going to talk about ANSI Standards. ANSI Standards will apply to most of the PPE we're talking about today. There's a standard in place, as an example, for eye protection. It's going to determine the eye protection quality, how well it can perform, and what testing it needs to go through before they put that Z87 stamp on it. One of the more important things, and often overlooked, is the hazard assessment. Hazard assessments are critical. Hazard assessments are part of the law. 1910-132 tells us that we must do a hazard assessment before we prescribe PPE. In other words, we need to look at these jobs, determine what the hazards are, and what are we going to do about these hazards? Are we going to try to eliminate them, mitigate them, or protect against them? If we're going to protect against them, then we have to make sure that somebody with the appropriate knowledge selects the appropriate PPE. We have a form in our Kinecta system connected to our safety dashboard that will walk you through that process. We're going to show you that here in a few minutes. And then finally, we'll be talking about employee training. OSHA requires that there are specific training topics covered. You need to know how to select a PPE, you need to know its limitations, you need to know how to properly put it on, take it off, and keep it clean and sanitary. That's common sense, but that's all covered in training. After this training, you should have a short discussion with your supervisor talking about these training requirements, and they may ask you to demonstrate that you can do these things properly. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into this PPE discussion today. When we talk about PPE selection, many times we have a lot of different types of jobs to be taking a look at. Some require a great deal of PPE. Some only need a little bit. In all cases, we need to make sure that we have the right kind of PPE. And I think you'll find that when you start looking deeply into different types of PPE in different applications, it can get pretty complicated. Even with things as simple as gloves, whether it's chemical protection, cut protection, different levels of cut protection, general handling. There's all kinds of options out there, and you need to know what you're doing. That's why OSHA tells us that we need to do this the right way. If you go on OSHA's website, osha.gov, you can get a great deal of information about the kinds of PPE, the programs that you need, and how to do hazard assessments. OSHA is the law. OSHA adopts ANSI Standards. The standards determine what PPE requirements are. OSHA has hundreds of standards that they incorporate by reference, and it's stated in 1910.6. Essentially, what they're telling us is that when you identify a hazard, you have to apply the hierarchy of controls. The first thing that you should try to do is to eliminate the hazard or replace it. Use engineering controls, maybe like ventilation, administrative controls, moving people around, change the way people work. But only as a last resort can you use PPE. Now, if you need to use PPE, the regulation, OSHA, tells us that the employer shall assess the workplace to determine if hazards are present or likely to be present, which necessitate the use of personal protective equipment. Then it tells us what the employer needs to do. They have to make sure that each affected employee is properly protected, they're trained, make sure it properly fits, and so forth. When we have to record a hazard assessment, it's very simple. Open up the assessment form, click the appropriate boxes, follow the drop-down list, select the right people, and then describe the job or the task. Sometimes this can get pretty involved. In most cases, they're pretty simple. Remember, we have to look at the hierarchy of controls. That's very important here. Here we have eye injury potential, talking about flying parts when you throw parts into a basket. And then we're going to ask if engineering controls and work practice controls were in place. Select the appropriate kind of safety protection, and then put down specifically what's recommended for this job. These are safety standards, safety glasses with side shields. We go through the same kind of process with the hand protection, and in the hand protection, you'll find that there's sharp edges. Gloves are going to need to be worn. We'll ask the same questions about engineering controls and work practice controls. We try to tell exactly what kind of PPE is required, and sometimes we even tell them where they can get it. We go down and we find further that maybe there's a foot injury potential, a hazard with that. Throwing parts sometimes means you could drop them on your foot and cause an injury. We collect that information, engineering, work practice controls. We determine what kind of foot protection is required, and then look if there's any other categories. Let's start talking about eye protection, safety glasses. There are a whole wide range of different kinds of safety glasses, styles, colors, shapes. They're all over the board. That's why this hazard assessment is very important. Also, there may be an opportunity for you to need to have tinted lenses in your safety glasses. If that's the case, you have to make sure that you get the appropriate tint. On top, you'll see sunglasses. they do not give you the protection against injurious radiation. We'll talk more about that in a second. Then we move over to goggles. Goggles give you the same type of protection, but they're usually tight-fitting, which will give you more peripheral protection. Some are chemical splash, some are just intended for different kinds of sharp objects or materials being thrown around. And then there are the kinds that have lenses that are tinted for various jobs like cutting or brazing or something like that. We always have to make sure in those cases that we get the appropriate lens shade. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. On welding helmets, most of those have like the large helmet here, have an automatic window where the shade isn't necessary to be selected. The window will automatically adjust to the radiation that's being pointed toward the helmet. There are still some of the old helmets out there that you have to select the lens, so beware, make sure you select the appropriate lens. And in these cases, of course, you can usually get these kinds of devices that attach to a hard hat. Face shields provide face protection. They do not provide eye protection. In most cases, when you wear a face shield, a primary protector or safety glasses are required to be worn underneath. In some cases, tinted lenses in the face shield are used to be doing things like hot work, grinding where there's a lot of sparks, and so forth. So if you're going to have a situation where there's radiant energy, light perhaps from brazing or doing some kind of hot work, make sure that you select the appropriate shade. If you don't select the appropriate shade, you could be subject to eye injury, eye damage. Let's now turn our attention to helmets, hard hats. There's a wide range of hard hats available. The most common type are polyethylene hard hats that you see on the left. The polyethylene hard hats offer a great deal of protection and are good in most cases. They provide moderate electrical protection, very good impact protection, and they're the lightest and probably most comfortable. If you need to have higher protection against electrical current, you may need to go to polycarbonate helmets. And then in places where there's molten metal, commonly used are fiberglass helmets. And on the right is the new one on the scene, and it's helmets that look more like a military-style helmet, and basically it gives you the same impact protection, but it, in addition, gives you side protection and stays on the, wraps the head more and stays on the head more securely. Make sure that you select the right kind of helmet for your situation, and there are ANSI standards that apply. When it comes to safety shoes, there's a wide range of safety shoes or foot protection that's available. We have to make sure that you follow the standards, and in this case, foot protection will be from an ANSI Z41 standard or an ASTM standard. You can see the markings inside of the shoes or the boots. For heavy operations like foundry work, you would want to wear something like you see in the top right part of the screen. Other situations will be determined by... And then there's gloves. Gloves probably are the most difficult because there are so many different kinds of gloves. there's such a wide range of quality within gloves, then gloves tend to get very expensive because they wear out quickly. I would suggest that you take your time, talk to a glove expert, and select the right kind of gloves. If you have a chemical issue, then you look at chemical degradation and permeation charts. If you have high cut issues, then you get the appropriate level of cut protection. Don't use standard leather gloves for welding. Those kinds of things. This, again, is where the hazard assessment really is going to do well for you. And the last category that we have then is body protection. There really aren't many standards out there for body protection. Most of those are done by the Safety Equipment Manufacturers Association. But a hazard assessment is something that will probably take more time if you need to have protection for the body, whether it's heat, cold, chemicals, whether it's welding or anything else. So that's going to wrap it up for us today. I'd like you to take away from this that each job is different and there's many different kinds of PPE. There's a lot of variations, a lot of options, and that's why that hazard assessment is so critical. Now, I'm asking that you have a short, brief conversation with your supervisor. You need to talk about when is PPE necessary. You have to know when you got to wear it. What PPE is necessary for what jobs. And then how to properly wear it. How to put it on, how to take it off. Sometimes that's very simple, but you should have a discussion about it. Very important, you need to know about the limitations of your PPE. And then finally, proper care. How do you clean it, disinfect it, and then dispose of it? So there you are. This is about everything you need to know about general PPE. You guys be safe out there and take care of one another.
Profits. Key Necta, where we drive profits and value people. Contact us today.